Hello, and in this video, we're going to talk about UTXOs as the Bitcoin bull market continues and the network becomes more congested. It's important to understand how UTXOs work, how transactions work on the network, and how if you don't consolidate them, they can come back to really bite you in the form of much higher transaction fees. So currently, the Bitcoin average transaction fee is up to $13 going into January 24. And as we see, this bull market underway, typically we're going to see higher demand for block space, and that results in higher transaction fees. So, why is this important? Well, you have to understand how the UTXO model works. So, in the Mastering Bitcoin book, this is highlighted very simply. So transactions are like lines in a double entry bookkeeping ledger. And on one side, you have inputs, which are like debits. And then on the other side, you have outputs, which are credits. And what the Bitcoin, when you see a balance in your wallet, what your wallet's really doing is scanning the Bitcoin network and summing up the amount of these outputs which your address can spend, right? And summing up this difference, and that's coming up with your amount, right? And so if you look at a transaction, it might look like something like this. These outputs are small digestible chunks of Bitcoin. So when you send Bitcoin to an address, say it's 0.10 Bitcoin, that might be one input, then you'll get 0.2. These are individual chunks of Bitcoin. These are those previous UTXOs. When you send, say, if I wanted to send 50 Bitcoin to someone else, what your wallet will do is then find a combination of these UTXOs, similar to coming up, reaching into your pocket and finding the correct amount of change, right? And it will then take these UTXOs and it will send those UTXOs in the form of a new output to the address minus transaction fees. So what that might look like is something like this. If you have Alice's wallet, Alice may have received over time 4 different transactions, right, which are now her unspent transaction outputs. This might be 2 Bitcoin and 4 Bitcoin. Well, if she wanted to go send 5 Bitcoin to Bob's wallet, you'll see she needs to choose a combination of inputs, and then the transaction will essentially transform this into a new UTXO for Bob's wallet that is 5 Bitcoin. And then a new UTXO will then come back as change to Alice's wallet. So as a result, we'll take 2 UTXOs and we'll have 2 new ones resulting in just 3 UTXOs. So you can see here with Alice's wallet, in this case, a simple case, she's actually consolidated 2 of her transactions into one. And then a new UTXO was sent to Bob's wallet. So what might this look like? And why is this important in terms of fees? Well, in this case, if you've been dollar cost averaging over the last 2 years, very small amounts of Bitcoin, and you want to send all of that to Coinbase to, buy that house of yours, well, you're going to have to consolidate all of these Bitcoin transactions. And the way that fees work on the Bitcoin network is by the amount of data. Each of these individual transactions have an amount of data, and the more data that the miners have to process, the higher the amount of fees you're going to have to spend. And in a very high fee environment, you might be stuck with an extremely high amount of fees that just to actually spend your Bitcoin. So this is somewhat of a very precarious situation you don't want to find yourselves in the future if you need to spend all of the Bitcoin you've been acquiring over some time. So here's a nice image from Bitcoin Briefly that shows how this consolidation might work. So on the left, what this simply, similar to the Alice scenario, is you may have 3 separate Bitcoin transactions, right? And what you want to do is you might be sending the sum of these transactions minus the mining fees to another wallet. And by sending all of this, the sum total of them, you're actually going to be consolidating this back, just like in Bob's case, into a single unspent transaction, right? So this might be a really good on the left example of how you might do this. So in the future, if you did need to go and spend that 3 Bitcoin, you can send just 1 UTXO to Coinbase or to an exchange to turn that into fiat dollars versus sending hundreds, tens or hundreds of your consolidation. So it's really, really important to get this across. As a reminder, Bitcoin transactions are essentially pointers that contain inputs and outputs. Your wallet is pointing and summing up all of the inputs and outputs across the blockchain to get to your address total. And the greater amount of those UTXOs that are in your wallet, so to speak, the higher the fees you may have to spend. So go ahead and do that now. Check out the, you can just search Bitcoin transaction fees. You can check out mempool.space. They both have areas where you can check the transaction fee amount and decide when it's right for you to consolidate UTXOs. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments. And if there's any other additional topics that would be interesting to learn about, go ahead and send me a message. Until next time.